Welcome to Relentless Truth with John Warren, the podcast that extracts truth from a wide range of topics, revealing who God is, who we are, and how we relate to each other. Now, here's John with this week's powerful and practical insights.
Welcome to Relentless Truth. I'm John Warren. It's good to be with you again. Please like, share, review, and subscribe to Relentless Truth. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also go to my website, johnwarrenmedia.com, to learn more about our work or to find our library of episodes. Please share the podcast with your friends. We are so grateful. We don't accept advertising or do any kind of promotional work. We just post some episodes every now and then on social media, and would ask that you do the same, that you send these episodes to your friends or post them on Facebook or X/Twitter or Instagram or wherever you hang out. We have some exciting things coming for the podcast, the Relentless Truth podcast. Going forward, we're going to do some, God willing, some video episodes and increase our episode frequency a bit, and that's exciting. Well, today, last week we talked about humbly employing our gifts, how Paul talks about how we're supposed to live in Christian community, and today I want to do an abrupt gear change, and I warned you that we would be doing this. But we've enjoyed the beauty of the preeminence of Christ and a number of biblical lessons that are powerful. So today, though, I want to talk about our country. I want to talk about the state of the nation, the state of our union, how things are going. And what is prompting me to do this is the Trump administration's 100-day mark. That just occurred in the last week or so. I think we're at 105 or 106 days as I record this episode. So I want to just talk through kind of how it's going. And I've had the wonderful blessing of having been in the classroom with some amazing students, really bright students who are up to speed on the news. Some of them don't care to track it, but many of them are as up to speed as I am on the news, and sometimes they'll even introduce a story that I missed. But I kind of know how the nation is feeling about things based on just asking my classes various questions. And it's interesting because when I ask the question, how's the Trump administration doing, I get usually overall positive reviews, but then I get some reservation from most people. It's kind of that you see, you hold your hand up and sort of toggle it back and forth. Maybe a little, and what I interpret from my students and from other people who I know in our society and my community and my world here in Central Florida and beyond, I get something like, I like the principles that the Trump administration is seeking to imply. I mean, I think they are advantaging Christian causes, and I like that. But they're doing so rather abruptly. They're doing so with a style that is inconsistent. I sometimes say they're killing flies with sledgehammers, or they're getting distracted. And I'm not sure they're getting distracted, but they're making mistakes as they go, and maybe that's inevitable, but it gives fodder to liberal elements in our political discourse to humiliate them. Now, this Trump administration, to me, is better and more resolute than the last one. That's not to say that it hasn't made some mistakes. I think they have made clear positions on transgender issues. They've been resolute. I think they clearly oppose abortion. I think they clearly oppose anti-Semitism. I think they clearly oppose an open border. And I'm grateful for those things. As a Christian, I don't know how you couldn't be. I'm not saying if you're a Christian, you have to support Trump administration. I'm not saying anything like that. I'm just saying with those particular issues, I don't know how you wouldn't say, well, those are good. Doesn't mean you have to like Donald Trump, the man. Doesn't mean you have to vote Republican. But I think we all can recognize that some good things are happening. I'll even go so far as to say, and I'm sure you're up to speed on, well, as much as a human can be, on all the tariffs and the back and forth. I guess I'm up to speed. I've looked at everything I can find, and I subscribe to the Wall Street Journal, and I look at some other serious news outlets, and as best I can tell, we reached across the negotiating table with many nations in the world, and we punched them in the mouth with very aggressive tariffs. And now we're saying, well, here's a tissue. Sorry, didn't mean to hurt you. Let's sit down and negotiate. And President Trump is doing what every developer I've ever met does, and trying to negotiate from a position of strength. I don't care about the art of the deal, and his negotiating style is not this wonderful solution to everything. It's impulsive, it's reckless, it's got some weaknesses. I believe though what he's intending to do is improve the American economy, and not just, we've become this economic indicator sort of country that just looks at, well, how did jobs do on Friday, or what's the inflation rate per the CPI, or it's almost like we have the economic attention span of a gnat, and that's not good. What the Trump agenda is to actually improve the basis for our economy, and that is manufacturing, and more than just manufacturing, distribution, everything that comes with it. And he's concerned about our vulnerability to China and to other countries. He's concerned about fairness in this arena, and I think he's wise to be skeptical and to probe this issue. So President Trump is talking about tariffs. I believe he has placed some very aggressive tariffs on China. I've heard a number like 145%, and they've put 125% tariff on us. I can't really tell. I just don't have the discernment, don't have the inside information to know, are all of these tariffs, and there's some of them are reciprocal, some are not, some are really aggressive, some are not quite so aggressive, but are they all in place? When do they all go in place? And I'm hearing some stories, and I think this might be just political talk, but I'm hearing some stories about shortages that are coming because of these tariffs. And believe me, anything that goes wrong, the Trump administration will be blamed. But I worry a little bit in this particular with this particular issue that these tariffs were done rather recklessly. And I think you can be for tariffs, for leveling the playing field, for promoting American manufacturing, without just wrecking our relationship with other nations. And if I am to believe what I'm hearing, our relationship with Canada, as an example, is just destroyed right now. I'm not saying irrevocably, but it is really not good. I think President Trump got the liberal guy running for their prime minister role, got him elected, with some of his rhetoric. I mean, suggesting that Canada should become our 51st state is absurd. It's those impulses that really drive me crazy. We're on the right track. We've got some really smart people in the cabinet, and we're on the right track. But the bravado and the way we communicated, and even the aggressive, bam, there's a tariff. Now what are you going to do? I think we could have done better with that. I don't know. I'm not there. I'm not inside, the Beltway, but in D.C. But I think we're just a little too aggressive and didn't have a plan. I think maybe we could have said, in 120 days, 90 days, whatever, we're going to put some tariffs in place, but we want to sit down with you, and we want to see if we can come up with a trade deal that makes sense. I've talked on this podcast about Smoot-Hawley and the 1930 trade wars and how they contributed to the depth of, they accelerated the Great Depression. I'm not sure that's going to happen in this case, but some are predicting something that is not good in terms of shortages and higher prices and the like. If you're going to take American manufacturing and build it back, then you're going to have to do it methodically. And we elect, it's really interesting. We elect our House of Representatives every 2 years. You're probably aware of that. The entire House has to get run for re-election every 2 years. I personally don't like that, but that's how this works. We elect our House of Representatives. So when they land in Washington, a new member of the House, they're running for re-election right away. And I think it makes them short-sighted. I think our president, I know this is not popular, but I think our presidential term of 4 years, I think it'd be nice if we could have 6 for the president. Now, bad president, that'd be a long, 6 years of Joe Biden would have been horrible, in my opinion. But in any case, President Trump is trying to be a long-range thinker and trying to restore American manufacturing, but you just can't. If you've ever been to Canton, Ohio, here's what I'd challenge you to do. And I really love some people there who I've had the joy of consulting with at a Christian school there. They are doing amazing work. It's called Heritage Christian School. They're doing some work that is just incredible. Their students, their faculty, their staff. But a friend of mine named Todd Bensel, who I also respect, who's an attorney and I don't think he practices law anymore, and he works at the school and to try to help the school in several ways, financially and otherwise. He took me for a drive through downtown Canton, and we encountered, if I remember correctly, it was a ball bearing factory. And it was closed. I think it was pretty much closed. Most of it was shut down. We drove for the longest time. I remember it was on the left side of the road. I don't even remember which direction we were going, but whatever that was, it was on the left side of the road, and it just kept going and going and going. And I thought, my goodness, that's the biggest factory I've ever seen. And parts of it were rusty and kind of shut down and boarded up, and I just imagined, wow, that must have been part of the automotive industry at one time and must have been thriving. And you're probably thinking, if you're in the Midwest, especially if you're in those states that are in the automobile industry and tangential to that, or in other states where maybe you have defense contracting and others that are shut down that were once thriving, or perhaps pharmaceutical manufacturing that is now outsourced to other countries. You're probably thinking, yeah, you can picture this because you see it every day. But there's this desire Trump has to bring all that back, and I think that's just wonderful. I like that. And I would imagine he feels like politically he's got to light his hair on fire and do this really quickly, because if just the negative implications of these changes occur before the midterm elections, those elections that happen in about a year and a half now, then he's going to lose the majority in the Congress, in the House and Senate, and that won't be good for the next 2 years of his presidency. He only gets another 3 3/4 years to accomplish this, and he needs the Congress to be able to do it. And so I get the sense of having a sense of urgency, but you don't just throw a switch and move manufacturing from leaving our country to coming back into our country and getting everything up and running. If these tariffs are disruptive to the supply chain, here it is in a nutshell. If these tariffs are disruptive to the supply chain as the COVID-19 was, then you know the problems that we're going to have, the challenges that we're going to have in the economy. So my concern is, in a nutshell, that the impulsive Trump needs to be more methodical. I like the objective. Strategically, I think the man is brilliant. Operationally, so he sets the target well. Getting to the target is the challenge, and we can talk about some other things too. And I want to just, I'm not going to leave tariffs behind, but that's the vulnerability that we have to China. And we talked about on a previous episode about shoes and all the things that are made in China and antibiotics and other pharmaceuticals. We're vulnerable. We're vulnerable from a food standpoint. We need to support our farmers. We don't need Chinese companies buying up huge tracts of our real estate. We need to support our farmers. I hope we can do it without tons of subsidies, but we need to give them tax incentives and the like. And manufacturing, we need to give tax incentives too. We need to have trade deals that are fair. I believe in all those things, but we need to be methodical, surgical about it. We need to be nuanced thinkers. It's not binary. It's not black and white. It's shades of those shades of gray in the middle. It's how do we execute this without crippling the economy? And there's some smart people in this administration who can do this, but President Trump needs to not be so impulsive to just constantly catch them off guard and have them in recovery mode. And I hope the Democrats will respect what he's trying to do. And I hope this talk of impeachment is just talk. I wish they would stop the foolish singing songs and objecting and holding rallies and protests and all the rest. I mean, you can do that in our country, but let's all get on board with the good things that this administration is trying to do. Having said that, I know it won't happen. But housing and stocks, I mean, that's another area where my students can smell, and I think you can too. I think adults in our society, the average person who kind of follows along, kind of gets the sense that this economy isn't great right now. It's transitioning, it's okay, but it's not great. You're seeing, things like Joann's Fabrics or your favorite fast food restaurant or others that are closing or limiting their hours or closing certain locations. You're not seeing a lot of expansion in business right now. I think it's shameful what these people have done with Tesla dealerships and the like. And I think that those kinds of things can impact the economy. And I think we're all kind of looking for indicators as to how this is really going. Well, the couple of places where I look are housing and cars. We're in a country obsessed with cars, and we if you look, they're starting to discount them. Ford is offering their vehicles at employee pricing, I think, throughout the country. You're seeing others that are now coming off of MSRP. You're seeing some consolidation among a couple of the Japanese brands. And so the wheels aren't falling off the industry, but I think there's some caution now. Housing is interesting because houses are still in key markets. When they're priced right, they sell very quickly. But in other markets that are a little more peripheral, they don't sell as quickly. So there's something going on there. We've had mortgage rates that were higher, up around 7. I think we're in the mid to high 6s now, depending on the day. And so it's not a change in mortgage rates. We also have a lot of people are sitting on mortgages. They own their house with mortgages that are fixed at very low interest rates. So that's impacting supply. So you still have limited supply, but people who really need to sell their houses are now starting to discount them from what would have been normal a year or two ago. So we're starting to see a transition. We're beginning to see a transition in the housing market. Now, I am not a financial advisor. I don't do any personal financial advising. I'm not going to say anything to you that should be construed as financial advice, personal financial advice. I'm making observations, but I believe it is time for everyone. But I'll just speak personally. for us, my family, to be careful and plan for an economic downturn. Now, that looks different for different people. I don't know your financial condition. I'm not going to say all the Dave Ramsey things. You can figure all that out on your own. But I've got a little bit of a brace for impact feel. Now, some of you say, well, wait a minute. We've had impact. What are you talking about? We have to pay double what we used to pay for groceries when we go to Publix or wherever we go in our town. And that's true. There's a hollowing out of the middle class that is going on. There's they're sometimes called the working poor. They don't qualify for government programs, but they're struggling. They have to go to food banks now to supplement. They can't eat the foods. They have to shop differently. I don't ask my students those questions directly. I don't ask them to identify themselves, but I can see the looks in their eyes as I discuss this. And I think some of their families are even impacted, which gives us a great opportunity to do what we talked about last week in Christian community, and that is to care deeply about the needs of each other, meet the needs of each other, even the strong with the weak, and so on. But this is a transitional economy, I believe. Let's change our focus just for a minute to this Russia-Ukraine conflict. That, to me, is one of the more emotional issues of our day. I have been a fan of Ukrainian people for a long time. There's a music ministry called Music Mission Kiev, and some dear people from Orlando started it. I believe a guy named Roger was the worship pastor or music minister at First Presbyterian Church in Orlando, and he started this ministry in Kiev and brings over choirs and orchestras, or brought them over. And I got to know, my wife and I housed some of them from time to time, and got to know their people. And they are dear, sweet people. They're passionate people. They're good people. They've been persecuted a lot. And what Russia has done, invading their country, I don't care about all the old philosophical arguments and all the territorial disputes and all the trying to wind the clock back to the Soviet Union and all the rest. Putin's a murderer, and he is absolutely bombing civilian targets now. And President Trump's doing the wrong thing publicly. He's trying to soft pedal publicly with Russia and not criticize them. And I don't know why. I have some theories that I'm not going to share because they're ugly. But I think President Trump might be a little personally vulnerable to some PR issues. But in any case, he's harsh on Ukraine. He did meet with Zelensky at the Pope's funeral, but Putin is aggressively bombing certain targets, civilian targets inside Kyiv, even inside of Russia. And there's talk of a deal that would allow Russia to keep some of the territory it's taken. Well, that is absurd. That can't happen. That's pacifism. They can't keep any of that territory, not 1 foot of it, if the right thing is done. And we ought to be talking that way. And if Putin doesn't want to negotiate, then NATO can deal with it. I don't want a war with Russia either, but Russia better be scared of a war. I don't understand the public discourse from the Trump administration on this topic. I mean, they're pivoting now, they're softening, but they're way too harsh. And I understand the Ukrainian government is not perfect. There's corruption in Ukraine, but Russia has done the wrong thing, and those countries need to go back to the pre-war boundaries. And they're, I mean. Write me and convince me that I'm missing something if you think I'm wrong. I don't think you give up Crimea. And I understand there's controversy over Crimea and its history and all the rest. You got Russians and Ukrainians living in each other's country too. And these societies were interwoven. I would imagine they still are. Many in Ukraine speak Russian, and some Russians speak Ukrainian. And culturally, they're very similar. They have lots of loving relationships, and yet I just don't see. I don't know why you would. I don't know why we would be any part as a nation of conceding any territory to Russia. It doesn't make sense. Well, that's another issue that I think. I'm not sure we know all the facts behind the scenes. Maybe Trump's posturing for some negotiation or something, but I hope he resists his impulsive support of Russia for whatever reason, and he might maybe stage setting for negotiation. Another item I want to talk about, though, is immigration. I think as you look at the first 100 days of the Trump administration, this is a place where there have been he's been wildly successful. The border crossings are at just a trickle now, just a small fraction of what they were under the Biden administration. If you look at the gotaways, and you can just measure it through all the metrics, and this administration is doing much better. But they have deported a few people, both arrested and deported a few people. Those are two different things. I understand that people that were deported have to be apprehended. But I'm talking, there are some people who've been arrested who were on their way to becoming citizens. One guy was in the last phase of that. Now, he was involved in some protests, and if he participated in violence, then of course his quest for citizenship should be halted. But there's a couple of judges were arrested and for letting illegal immigrants leave through a back door to avoid ICE and being apprehended. And so I guess you have to look at the facts in all those cases. But here's what it feels like to me. It feels like Tom Homan is doing a good job, but it feels like they need to be a little more nuanced and a little more careful, and they can't be wrong once. They've got to get this right, because if you arrest the ideal father who's been in this country for years and has 4 kids and is part of our society, part of the fabric of our society, and you mess up on one and you say, oh, he's Trende Aragba or he's MS-13 or whatever. I'm not talking about the guy that was deported recently and is all over the news. I'm just using that as an example, that sort of thing as an example. You just can't make mistakes with this. You can't just use a broad net and grab everybody and have a couple of law-abiding Americans or dreamers or whatever they are caught up in all that. You can't just persecute people. You can't leverage the government to take away free speech on our college campuses. There's a battle going on with them. You know about the Columbia and Harvard and funding and protests and all the things. We've got to allow free speech, not violence. Obviously, we've got to restore law and order, rule of law. But I all I would ask there is that the Trump administration should, I believe, use a scalpel, not an axe, or use a scalpel, not a chainsaw. And I know I probably made some of you angry with that. I think directionally we're trying to do the right thing. I think that my hat is off to Tom Homan and Kristi Noem and President Trump and many others who are Border Patrol and all the rest who are doing noble work and have improved that whole situation dramatically. And I do think any criminal element that has made its way into our country, and I know that includes a lot of people, but I do think they should be deported. So that's immigration, and then finally, I just would love to see this. I think I'm kind of in fantasy land as I say this, but the Democratic opposition, this knee-jerk, automatic Elizabeth Warren nonsense. Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders at least drink the Kool-Aid and believe in what they're saying. But this oppose Trump at every turn. Just oppose to oppose. You don't have a plan. You haven't done anything. You care about your own political aspirations, continuing those. I would just suggest, could we please meet in the middle on some issues? Could we go back and just, could some of you Democratic leaders act more like Tip O'Neill than Elizabeth Warren. Could you just realize that wait a minute, maybe this administration does care about our country and meet in the middle and compromise? And at the same time, President Trump, why don't you do that too? Why don't we try to work on the polarization? And I know the money machines and the power that these people get intoxicated with. I get the fact that that polarizes, but it feels like the Republican Party is at least starting to congeal around this administration. This feels differently to me than it did 5 years ago in President Trump's first administration. This feels better. It feels like he's a little softer, a little kinder, a little more adept. He embraced the governor of Michigan, Whitmer is her name, I think, yesterday at a tour of an automotive plant where he did a big speech. I think there's a little bit of a kinder and gentler, less impulsive guy there now. And I would just love to see reaching across the aisle by both, and I know you would too, by both parties. There are some of my friends who say, no, you idiot, what are you thinking? They can't reach across the aisle. They got to stand and he's got to keep steamrolling. I kind of don't agree. I think, yes, he's got to be aggressive. Yes, you've heard the expression, it's easier to ask forgiveness than permission. And I understand that that's kind of his style, but I would suggest that maybe we reach across the aisle. And I think as Christians, and any sentence that starts with as Christians is going to be lecturing. I really do think that it's all about love and how we love. And Paul talks about this in 1 Corinthians 13. You're very familiar with it, but love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It's not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. And then if you look on down, he talks about giving up childish ways. And then he says, now faith, hope, and love abide. These three. But the greatest of these is love. And I realize Hallmark and Facebook posts have sort of blunted the impact of this chapter for a lot of people. But it is a consistent theme in Paul's writing. It's a consistent theme in all of Scripture. The steadfast love of our Lord endures forever. It is all about love. If you define love correctly, it's all about love. I want our administration to be loving, deeply loving the truth, loving principles, the rule of law, and so on, loving in relationships with other nations, justice, fairness. I opposed DEI and the way it rolled out and those policies, and yet we need to be loving with people groups who aren't like us. I like diversity, equity, and inclusion as principles. I just don't like those cram down your throat government policies. And yes, I think we can differentiate and be nuanced thinkers there. Well, I hope, as negative as this was, as we walk through the state of the country politically, I hope you're encouraged by this. We are, dear Christian, we are able to look at the facts objectively, to employ critical thinking at a high level, insist that our government do right and do right on a nuanced basis, not just with a sledgehammer, and I think we can do so in love. I think there's a loving way to talk to each other when we disagree. I think that would reduce the polarization. I'm optimistic. You make me optimistic. My students make me optimistic. Their families make me optimistic. A lot of the American people, I think a lot of the American electorate gets this, understands this on both sides of the aisle. I think there's a huge part. I picture a bell-shaped curve. I think the fat part of the bell curve in our country gets it. It's the people on the tails of the bell curve on either end with the megaphones and some of the influence that kind of give us the impression that we're all fighting each other all the time, when in fact there is consensus in the fat part of the bell curve to some degree. And I do realize I sound naive to some of you, but I hope this has been encouraging. It is truly all about love. Love is the solution for the economy. It's the solution for the housing market and the stock market, the Russian-Ukraine conflict, the immigration challenges, and even Democratic opposition to all things Trump. Love is a central theme in Scripture. And when I say that, just to be clear, I'm talking about agape. I'm talking about loving without regard for reciprocity, meeting the needs of the other party without regard for what they can do for me. That is a beautiful principle that appears on every page of Scripture because God Himself is love. We shouldn't, dear Christian, bifurcate this issue. We're not just secular over here with government policies and then loving when we go to church or engage in church community. So I hope this is helpful. I hope it's encouraging. I hope you'll share it with friends. This is not our norm, but I just felt compelled to address some of these issues today. I hope this has been constructive and encouraging for you. Please like, share, review, and subscribe to Relentless Truth. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts, or you can go to our website, johnwarrenmedia.com. You can send an email to me at john@johnwarrenmedia.com or use our contact form on the website. Please share the content of this episode of Relentless Truth with your friends. This is how we grow the audience, and I look forward to being with you again next week.
Thanks for listening to Relentless Truth with John Warren. Please consider sharing this podcast and subscribe to receive future episodes. Connect with John regarding your comments, questions, and show ideas through johnwarrenmedia.com or at John Warren Media on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. That's all for this episode. Join us next week for another edition of Relentless Truth with John Warren.